Would $1 million be enough to make you swim inches away from a waterfall's edge where one wrong step means there's no second chance? A plank bolted to the side of a cliff with nothing but a chain between you and a 1,000-foot drop. A road so narrow it's been named after death itself. These aren't stunts. They're not exaggerated. They're just places where the danger is real and people go anyway. From swimming face to face with great white sharks to being lowered in a cage straight into a tank full of crocodiles to a mountain that's killed more climbers than it's let reach the summit. This is a journey through the most dangerous corners of the world, places where the risk is real, but so is the reward. So, let's find out just how far people will go, and just how dangerous our world still is. During the nearly sunless winter, swimming with orcas in Tromsø places swimmers in the dark Arctic waters where groups of orcas hunt directly below. The first danger is the water temperature between 36 and 41 degrees Fahrenheit, which can cause the body to lose movement within 3 to 5 minutes without a specialised diving suit. With only a snorkel, swimmers must float in the dark water as enormous black and white bodies may suddenly pass at extremely close range. Their brains weigh nearly 15 pounds, helping them communicate, work together, and change hunting strategies with every movement of the herring. During the hunt, they charge into the school of fish and strike powerfully with their tails to stun many prey at once. Sean. When the entire group appears in the darkness beneath the northern lights, the beautiful scene quickly becomes a cold and frightening encounter. Turning into a prison suspended in the sky, Skylodge Adventure Suites locks guests inside glass capsules attached to an almost vertical cliff. To enter, they must climb to a height of about 1,312 feet, exhausting themselves just to reach a capsule with no foundation beneath it. After night falls, mountain winds strike the cliff and gently shake the room, keeping the brain alert and making sleep almost impossible. The fear grows whenever loose stones suddenly hit the roof, creating the nightmare that a rock slide could fall at any moment. If someone suffers a heart attack or loses consciousness, the steep cliff makes direct helicopter access difficult and turns the rescue into a race against time. Ironically, guests still pay between $400 and $500 to endure this pressure in exchange for one unusual night and a few photographs proving their courage. Only seconds after the door closes, Crocosaurus Cove lowers you into murky water, where a saltwater crocodile more than 16 feet long waits just inches from your face. At that moment, the fear grows stronger when you learn that its bite, force of 3,700 pounds per square inch, is powerful enough to crush human bones in an instant. In that situation, the acrylic wall, nearly 2 inches thick, almost disappears because of bending light, making you feel as if you are floating without protection. Finally, the lonely experience becomes a nightmare as it tears apart its food only a few inches away, revealing how small humans are beside an ancient predator. Inside the abandoned apartment blocks of Tixie, snow is carried by the wind through broken windows, covering living rooms and stairways like the inside of an ice cave. The empty rooms are traces of a golden age with nearly 12,000 residents, before more than 70% of the population left and abandoned concrete blocks remained in the Arctic wind. Some buildings were once painted pink, lemon yellow and blue to soften the long dark winter, but the peeling paint now makes the town feel even colder. Along the frozen coastline, rusted cargo ships are trapped in thick ice, their punctured hulls looking like the remains of an old port. When the short summer arrives, ground ice melts into mud and brings thick clouds of Arctic mosquitoes, making even the rare warm period uncomfortable. Beh. Even fresh green vegetables must travel thousands of miles by air and can sometimes cost more than meat, showing how life in Tixie is worn down by cold, isolation, and shortage. Without a steel cage for protection, Becker Lagoon places divers in waters where up to 8 different shark species may appear at the same time. At extremely close range, local divers use their hands to place food directly into the jaws of sharks, weighing more than 1,100 pounds. Around this scene, more than 400 species of colourful fish move in large schools among the predators. However, the greatest threat comes from groups of bull sharks with a bite force of nearly 1,300 psi, powerful enough to crush a turtle shell or animal bones in a single bite. For this reason, divers must kneel still beside the deep water and avoid sudden movements that could attract the shark's attention. When the sharks swim close enough for their tails to strike a mask, everyone must also wear full black diving suits to avoid being mistaken for panicked prey. Standing where a barren desert crashes into the freezing ocean, Skeleton Coast looks like a deadly edge of the world. Most frightening of all, violent winds keep pushing sand toward the sea by up to 50 feet each year, burying countless shipwrecks as far as 2,640 feet inland. Because of that, the landscape has no sense of peace, only sand walls 300 feet high facing the roaring grey ocean. Top of that, the friction of billions of sand grains can create a roar up to 105 decibels, almost like an aircraft engine. In that furious space, thousands of shipwrecks from past centuries remain trapped, turning the whole coast into a massive maritime graveyard. Finally, this death zone carries a wild paradox, as desert lions have changed their behaviour to hunt seals along the coast. leaving the protection of a specialised vehicle. The Tiger Tracking Safari in Chitwan National Park takes walkers into the territory of more than 120 adult Bengal tigers. Tigers are not the only danger, because more than 600 one-horned rhinos weighing up to 4,409 pounds can charge toward unfamiliar sounds at 25 miles per hour. Without using tracking devices, guides listen for alarm calls from monkeys and study footprints to determine the direction of the tigers. The greatest danger comes from grasslands rising between 20 and 26 feet, where a tiger weighing 441 pounds can hide only a few steps away. During the journey, the guides carry no guns, only sticks, and rely on knowledge passed down through generations to avoid areas with dangerous animals. If a tiger or rhino suddenly appears, you must stand still, remain calm, and never turn and run, because that action can trigger its instinct to chase. Crossing a violent collision zone between tectonic plates, the Karakoram Highway stretches for 808 miles and climbs to nearly 15,397 feet, turning every journey into a test of survival. Along the road, blue glaciers descend close to the pavement, contrasting with grey rock walls and dry canyons. The danger increases where sections are carved deep into the mountainside, allowing cracked rocks to fall suddenly onto passing vehicles. This difficult terrain also forced construction teams to use large amounts of explosives and work for many years among extremely unstable granite cliffs. As the road climbs higher, the air becomes thinner, making drivers feel dizzy, sick, and unable to focus around bends beside deep drops. Even more dangerously, downhill sections stretching for dozens of miles can overheat the brakes, causing vehicles to lose control and plunge from the mountainside. Seen from offshore, El Nido's limestone walls rise like a natural fortress above the blue sea, hiding a dangerous trade behind a peaceful coastal scene. What draws local people into the dark caves is the edible swiftlet nests clinging to the rock ceiling, known as white gold, because they can sell for more than $1,300 per pound. The name El Nido means the nest, tied to the nests that brought Chinese traders across the sea from the 10th century to exchange porcelain and silk for this precious product. To reach them, harvesters must cling to limestone cliffs about 250 million years old, where erosion has carved the surface into countless blade-sharp grooves. Many quiet blue lagoons here are actually the inner parts of ancient caves whose roofs collapsed, while the crystal water comes from sunlight reflecting off a sandy floor rich in calcium carbonate. Behind that tropical beauty are darkness, height, and narrow rock ledges, where the true price of swiftlet nests can be paid with human life. Tearing through the darkness with neon blue flames, Mount Ijen releases sulfur gas heated to about 1,112 degrees Fahrenheit, which then ignites around the volcanic crater. Directly below lies a turquoise lake with a pH close to 0, strong enough to corrode metal and turn one wrong step into a disaster. Even more dangerously, visitors must wear gas masks because sulfur clouds can suddenly change direction and completely block their view. If someone removes the mask, just as the wind blows toxic gas toward them, their eyes may burn, their throat may tighten, and panic can quickly make them lose their sense of direction. In this almost lifeless environment, miners still carry between 154 and 198 pounds of sulfur on their shoulders, moving slowly across the steep ground to earn a living. Faced with extreme heat, an acidic lake, and constantly shifting toxic gas, Mount Ijen shows just how fragile humans are before the raw power of the earth. turning narrow streets into a deadly race. The San Fermin Bull Run sends a sea of people dressed in white with red scarves rushing forward as fighting bulls close in behind them. Each bull can weigh between 1,100 and 1,300 pounds. So when it charges at around 15 miles per hour, one strike can break bones or throw a runner onto the stone road. Screams echoing between the walls and the tightly packed crowd increase the animal's stress, causing them to change direction suddenly and become even harder to predict. However, the danger does not come only from their horns, because one person slipping in a narrow section can pull dozens of others down. Those trapped at the bottom may have their chests crushed, lose air, and remain directly in the path of the charging herd. Cruelly, the 6 bulls that run in the morning are taken into the arena that afternoon, turning a few minutes of human excitement into a death sentence for both people and animals. About 30 miles offshore, Tiger Beach hides a white, sandy plain beneath its clear water, where tiger sharks up to 16 feet long silently glide close to humans. When one suddenly moves closer, divers may place a hand on its sensitive nose and gently push its head aside to avoid the enormous jaws. Even more frightening, these predators can weigh up to 1,764 pounds, yet make almost no sound as they pass only inches from a diver's shoulder. Although the water is only 20 to 33 feet deep, divers must remain kneeling on the seabed without any steel cage for protection. Finally, the bright underwater paradise becomes a terrifying encounter that no one should experience alone before some of the ocean's most powerful predators. Like a death trap hidden deep in the forest, Temple of Doom forces divers to carry heavy equipment and jump nearly 10 feet into the dark water below. Its narrow underwater paths have caused deadly accidents, especially when skilled divers become too confident or move beyond the safe area. Near the entrance, the clear water and bright sunlight create a false feeling of safety, tempting inexperienced visitors to swim deeper into the cave. At around 40 to 50 feet, fresh water meets salt water and bends the light, making everything appear to shake like an image seen through oil. Farther inside, tight rock columns, narrow turns, and complete darkness can quickly destroy a diver's sense of direction. The greatest danger is panic, because fast breathing wastes the air supply and can leave a trapped diver without enough time to find the exit. Rising from a geological crack in 1850, Cerro Negro has become a deadly arena for volcano boarding at speeds of up to 56 miles per hour. If riders lose control at the record speed of 102 miles per hour, this giant meat grinder can tear through even the strongest protective suit. Ironically, they must wear orange canvas suits resembling death row uniforms, using them as a thin shield against thousands of sharp stone blades. The slope is far from smooth, as it is covered by millions of volcanic cinders containing tiny glass particles that can cut anyone who falls onto them. From a distance, this deadly black mountain rises above the tropical forest like a giant decaying wound carved into the landscape. Even more dangerously, its 41-degree slope can shift beneath the riders, removing every stable foothold and turning each descent into a life-or-death gamble. In a deep canyon, the salt fields hanging from the cliffs make Yunjing look like a large chessboard beside a fast river. This special scene comes from very hard work, because women have to carry salty water from low ground up to the drying frames every day. Since salty air makes iron nails rust and break quickly, local people cannot build this system in the usual way. Instead, they use wooden pegs and ropes to hold thousands of salt ponds on the steep cliffside. At an altitude of 7,874 feet, strong sunlight and wind blowing through the canyon help the salty water evaporate faster, leaving crystals of salt on the surface. After more than 1,200 years, this handmade salt making method still exists, showing that people can live and work even in a very harsh place. K2, Pakistan-China border. K2 rises like a giant pyramid of rock and ice at about 28,251 feet, making it the world's second highest mountain and one of the clearest symbols of extreme brutality in high altitude climbing. Near the summit, a narrow and steep ice gully sitting below a huge hanging serac is widely feared as the worst section because tens of thousands of tons of snow and ice can collapse in an instant. Around the top, giant lenticular clouds often appear like warning signs of violent winds that can blow past 124 miles per hour, strong enough to tear a climber from the slope. Its death rate was once so severe that about 1 out of every 4 people who reached the summit never came back, which is why this mountain has long been seen as harsher and more unpredictable than Everest. Unlike many peaks with gentler approaches, every route here raises in brutally steep terrain and demands top level skill in rock climbing, ice climbing, and mixed climbing. Even before the real ascent begins, climbers must spend weeks crossing a broken and lonely glacier field, and during the fiercest storms, the wind chill on the mountain can drop to about minus 76 degrees Fahrenheit. Under the dark tree cover inside the Swamp Canal network, the chilling thing on the island of the Dolls is not a sound, but plastic heads pinned in layers onto tree trunks with rusty wire. The obsession began with Don Julian Santana, who lived here in isolation and hung discarded dolls because he believed the spirit of a drowned young girl was still lingering nearby. Some tree trunks hold 30 to 40 damaged faces, making the landscape look like a silent crowd trapped in the swamp. The ring of water oaks closes tightly overhead and almost blocks the sunlight, keeping the island dark green and gloomy even at noon. Many dolls, made from plastic and rubber, need 400 to 1,000 years to break down slowly leaking microplastics and chemicals into the swamp water. As visitors keep hanging more dolls year after year, the island does not only extend Don Julian's obsession, but also turns fear into a layer of toxic waste piling up on the trees. Once a strange boat crosses the exclusion zone around North Sentinel, the act is no longer exploration, but something that can threaten both outsiders and the island residents. Because no one is allowed to check directly, the population here is only guessed at 39 to 400 people, making every number uncertain. The danger does not come from the landscape, but from thousands of years of refusing contact and the way the Sentinelese defend their territory with bows, arrows, and spears. In recorded encounters, people moving near the shore can be met with arrows and spears, while one flu or measles virus from outsiders is enough to bring disaster. The killing of American missionary John Allen Chow after he landed illegally in 2018 shows that this boundary is a real rule of survival. The 3-mile exclusion zone created by India both keeps outsiders away from death and protects the Sentinelese from disease, interference, and modern curiosity. Winding between towering mountain slopes, Zojilar Pass makes even experienced drivers tense from the very first bends. During winter, snow can reach 49 to 79 feet, completely burying the road and forcing the pass to close for nearly 6 months. The danger increases at an altitude of about 11,575 feet, where the air contains only around 65% as much oxygen as at sea level, causing drivers to tire quickly and lose concentration. Even under these conditions, they must control their vehicles on a slippery mud track only 10 to 13 feet wide, with almost no protective barriers. A single wheel slipping from the road could send the vehicle over the edge and down a drop of about 3,281 feet. Even after the snow melts, engineering crews may need several weeks to locate and reopen sections of road that were completely buried. Beside the muddy pits of Paracalais, the sound of air compressors is not the noise of a normal work site, but a sign that someone is breathing through a plastic tube underground to search for gold. Many shelters made from scrap wood and rusted metal sheets stand above hand-dug tunnels, leaving homes and roads under the constant risk of collapse. In this mining method, miners dive into mud pits 33 to 66 feet deep, almost completely blind, and feel for rock with their bare hands. Gold veins here were mined before the 16th century, when gold was once common enough for native ancestors to wear as everyday jewellery. To separate gold from rock, liquid mercury is overused, poisoning the surrounding soil and water, while rivers near the mines turn red-brown from mineral sediment. After 10 hours soaking in mud, they may recover less than 0.04 ounces of gold, enough to keep hope alive, but also enough to pull a human life close to the mouth of the pit. A package trying to find the right doorway in Racina sometimes has to depend on the memory of local residents, because many alleys have no names and many homes have no numbers. The name Rosina originally meant little farm, once tied to vegetable plots on the hill before concrete, stairways and stacked houses covered the mountainside. Almost the entire surface has been replaced by brick, metal roofs and cement, making the inner core about 5 to 9 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than the green areas around it. Above the steep, deep alleys, electric wires, fibre optic cables and telecommunication lines stretch in tangled layers, making the already narrow space feel even more suffocating. The security situation is complex, with armed gangs and police operations that have sometimes forced schools, shops and residents to shut down when sudden gunfire breaks out. From a small farm into a cramped concrete mountain, Racina shows that dangerous places are not always empty. They can be places where more than 100,000 people still live every day. Nanga Parbat, Pakistan. Nanga Parbat rises like a dark, bare and silent mountain at the western edge of the Himalayas, standing about 26,660 feet high as the world's ninth highest peak, and for a long time it has carried the terrible reputation of a killer mountain. So brutal were its storms and winds that even after the first ascent, humanity had to wait more than 60 years before the summit was reached in winter in 2016. Even before 1953, this mountain had already taken the lives of 31 explorers, giving it one of the heaviest death records among all peaks, above 8,000 metres. Its name is tied to the dark look of its steep rock walls, where snow cannot stay for long, making the whole massif appear like a gigantic black fortress rising into the sky. Its most terrifying feature remains the south face, which climbs about 15,092 feet from the base to the summit in a wall of rock and ice that feels almost endless. What makes Nanga Parbat even more unusual is that it is still being pushed upward by about 0.3 inches each year as tectonic plates continue to collide, as if the mountain itself is still growing. Turning a giant aluminum tube into a weightless chamber, this flight allows passengers to flip freely through the air like real astronauts. However, before they can float, an acceleration force nearly twice their normal weight presses their bodies hard against the floor. To reduce the shock, the aircraft first performs gentler curves that simulate the weaker gravity of Mars and the Moon, helping the nervous system adjust. True weightlessness begins only when the passengers and the aircraft fall together from about 34,000 feet toward 24,000 feet. This descent, at nearly 32 feet per second squared, pushes body fluids toward the upper body, causing facial swelling, a blocked nose, and increased pressure inside the head. The final danger appears when the aircraft pulls upward again, because any loose coin or pen floating in the cabin can suddenly fall hard toward the floor. From far away in the evening light, the sharp grass roofs of Ratangaro rise near the coastline like spears, making the ancient village look like a living museum set between salty wind and the ocean. In front of the houses, megalithic tombs sit between stairways and daily living yards, so the living pass through ancestral memory every day. The village is also linked to Pasola, a yearly horseback spear-throwing ritual, where hundreds of riders charge across the grassland at 25 to 37 miles per hour and accept injury as part of their belief. Sitting at a narrow river mouth where freshwater meets ocean waves, Ratangaro faces constant wind gusts, salt dust and moisture covering its thatched roofs all year. The small but tough horses here are not only used for travel, but are also believed to guide the souls of the dead to the next world. So, because of this, Ratangaro is not only striking because of its tall roofs and stone tombs, but also shows how cultural beauty here is always tied to harsh nature, dangerous ritual, and real risk to life. Anak Krakatau was born after a disaster that killed 36,000 people. Then it was knocked down by sea waves many times before finally standing firm in 1930. What makes the island dangerous is that its magma chamber sits very shallow beneath the seabed, allowing seawater to enter and create powerful steam explosions. In 2018, this process helped trigger a major landslide, creating a tsunami and cutting the mountain's height from 1,109 feet to 361 feet. After each eruption, the ground changes again with black ash, pumice, hot cracks, and new layers of lava. Volcanic ash does not only cover the island but can also rise high into the sky, threatening aircraft and damaging engines. Even so, on that toxic ground, life slowly returns, showing that nature can begin again in a place that once seemed completely dead. Directly above the active crater of Villarica volcano, riders must leave the helicopter skid and fall toward the glowing pit of fire below. Before this happens, they must sign a document confirming that they understand the serious risks involved in the journey. The helicopter then carries the mission to more than 9,843 feet, where the crater appears like an orange eye surrounded by snow-covered slopes below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. As the fall begins, the view quickly turns upside down, while a lava lake, hotter than 2,192 degrees Fahrenheit, opens directly ahead. The danger does not end there, because volcanic ash entering the engine could cause the helicopter to lose power and threaten everyone on board. On the Zanskar route, many bends are only 8 to 10 feet wide and have no guardrails, making the wheels crawl near the edge as if moving along the line between life and death. In some sections, the rock ceiling above is only 8 to 12 inches from the vehicle roof, forcing drivers to fold their mirrors and control each small movement to avoid hitting the wall. In winter, temperatures can fall to minus 22 to minus 31 degrees Fahrenheit, while the high canyon walls let sunlight touch the valley floor for only 1 to 2 hours a day. The vehicle can only move a few more feet when the driver keeps the wheels away from the edge, avoids the rock wall, and reads every small change in the weather. The sky above Kibba is not pale blue, like in the lowlands, but turns into a harsh, deep blue because the air is too thin and the moisture almost disappears. In summer, the landscape around the village has almost no vegetation, only reddish-brown rock, ash-grey ground, and cracked dry slopes that look like the surface of Mars. When snowstorms strike, every curve of the land is flattened under thick snow, making even familiar paths disappear after one night. In that cold, rocky world, white houses with dark window frames and flat roofs appear like a man-made oasis clinging tightly to the mountainside. The frightening part is that a person standing in winter sunlight can still get burned by ultraviolet rays, while their fingertips go numb from sub-zero cold. Because of this, Kibba is not only harsh because of its height, but because of the extreme contrast between burning sunlight, deep snow, dry barren rock, and a small village forced to hold itself together among the mountains. Miyakojima does not have peaceful white sand beaches, but appears with black basalt shores, sharp lava cliffs, and pale yellow mist covering the sea surface. Schools, shrines, and vehicles, once swallowed by lava, still lie under basalt rock up to 33 feet thick, like the remaining traces of old disasters. From cracks beneath the ground, sulphur gas still leaks out in faint streams, making the landscape feel unsafe even when it looks beautiful. At one time, anyone stepping onto the island had to carry a gas mask at all times because a sudden toxic cloud could turn normal movement into real danger. Even cars, bicycles, and metal window frames are corroded by sulphur gas 3 to 5 times faster than in other places. Because of this place is not only frightening because of the volcano, but because its black rock, toxic mist, and rusting metal all show that life here always comes with risk. In the heart of Kenya's capital, Kibera appears like a giant patchwork wound, where up to 1 million people are forced beneath a sea of rusted metal roofs in less than 1 square mile. The most absurd sight is the National Railway slicing through the slum, while residents still sell goods close to the rails and step back only a few paces when the train rushes toward them. With no real road system, narrow dirt alleys become the only paths to daily life, then turn into garbage-thick mud whenever rain falls. Above their heads, a patched electrical network, with most of the power illegally tapped, leaves exposed leaking wires hanging close to dirty puddles. Only seconds after the cage touches the water, Gansby places you in cold, murky seas where a great white shark can suddenly appear directly ahead. When it moves closer, the only barrier between your face and a mouth containing around 300 serrated teeth is a set of steel bars spaced nearly 6 inches apart. Even more frightening, visibility of only 7 to 16 feet allows these enormous bodies to hide easily behind kelp forests rising nearly 98 feet. A colony of 60,000 seals attracts great white sharks, measuring up to 20 feet long and weighing more than 4,409 pounds to hunt in these waters. Under these conditions, a single moment of panic could push the encounter beyond control, making this a place no one should ever enter alone. Compressed into only about 2 square miles, Scampia feels like an urban oven, where summer street temperatures can become 7 to 11 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than the surrounding area. The plan to reserve 50% of the area for parks almost collapsed, causing green space to fall below 11 square feet per person and removing the neighbourhood's natural cooling buffer. After the 1980 earthquake, thousands of homeless people moved into the unfinished blocks, turning a planned urban project into a chaotic place of survival. From there, 14 to 15-storey apartment blocks rose close together, forming a strange concrete wall shaped like giant sails. Rusted elevated walkways and rotten staircases crossed over one another, making daily life feel trapped inside a heavy maze. In the end, the government had to use thousands of pounds of explosives to destroy many grey blocks, trying to erase the fortress symbol of the criminal world. Suspended on a granite cliff rising at nearly 90 degrees, the wooden plank walk on Mount Hua takes hikers into open space at a terrifying height. The area is often covered by thick clouds beside the boards, hiding the deep drop and creating the feeling of floating in the sky. When the clouds clear, the enormous empty space beneath their feet becomes visible, making many hikers tense and unable to remain calm. Even more frighteningly, the path consists only of wooden boards less than 12 inches wide, with no railing or safety net on the outside. A single slip on the smooth rock could lead to a free fall lasting 15 to 20 seconds, causing many hikers to freeze and cling tightly to the cliff. After reaching the end, hikers must return along the same narrow boards, sometimes pressing against the rock or leaning outward to let someone coming the other way pass. Like an urban superorganism compressed inside Mumbai, Dharavi holds about 1 million people in only 1 square mile, with a density 10 times higher than Manhattan. Here, a home is not only a place to live, but also a workshop where toxic plastic recycling and textile production happen right beneath the place where families sleep. When the ground no longer has enough space, life is forced to climb upward, turning shared walls into support points for stacked floors. In a space of only 97 to 151 square feet, for an entire family, every meal, sleeping hour, and working shift must be arranged like a survival schedule. Outside, dark and narrow alleys are thick with the smell of chemicals, fabric dust, and burning plastic, forming a maze where strangers can easily lose their direction. Oh, but behind that torn layer of metal roofs, Dharavi still runs a $1 billion informal economy each year, proving that poverty here does not mean standing still. A rooftop in Patare can be a yard, a walkway, or the support base for the house above, making the whole settlement feel like an unsafe, stacked system. Red brick homes connect through narrow stairways, black power wires, and temporary paths, forming a living maze with almost no breathing space. Only one large road can separate this slum from glass towers and wealthy districts, making the contrast painfully direct. Buffet Tepu. Tens of thousands of temporary electric cables cut the sky into pieces, while below, small shops, food stalls, and informal clinics still try to keep daily life going. At one point, the murder rate rose above 100 cases per 100,000 people, meaning the danger is not only inside the buildings but also in the power of the streets. Because of this, Petare is not only overcrowded, but an urban maze where people must live among stacked homes, inequality, and everyday risk. Imagine looking down into a quiet valley and seeing Kwandixia village rise like a stone gold ingot on the mountainside. Strangely, it kept its old shape not because it was protected from the beginning, but because it was once too poor and too remote to be modernised. At sunset, the light turns the grey stone gold, while the lower alleys darken fast, making the whole village change colour in just minutes. Once inside, you do not find flat streets, but rough stone lanes, steep steps, and narrow paths shaped by the slope. With more than 400 years of history, the village was once tied to trade routes, merchants, and horse caravans stopping in the mountains. Today, many original families still share the Han surname, but younger people have left, leaving elders to watch over this slow and lonely piece of history. Often seen as the real-life model for Silent Hill, Centralia is a ghost town being burned from below by an underground coal fire that started in 1962. Before it was buried in 2020, one road was covered in graffiti, creating the strange sight of bright paint sitting above ground that was still burning underneath. Toxic gas and collapse risks forced residents to leave, while nearly 500 homes and buildings were cleared away. Few people realise the disaster began with a trash fire, then spread underground, affecting about 400 acres and possibly burning for another 250 years. Since 1966, more than 2,000 boreholes have been drilled to track the fire, with some spots once measuring about 1,350 degrees Fahrenheit. In the end, Centralia shows how one small mistake can quietly erase the homes, streets, and memory of an entire town. In the middle of a wide river, Almirall Castle rises like a stone fortress cut off on a small granite island. Under the red glow of sunset, the tower shadows stretch across the still water, making the fortress feel less violent and almost legendary. The stones used for the walls were taken from the island itself, so the fortress and the rock base share the same colour, as if the castle grew out of the cliff. With no bridge to the mainland, anyone who wants to enter must cross by small boat, making the trip feel like a journey 800 years into the past. In the 12th century, it served as a defensive line for the Knights Templar, with 9 round towers helping reduce blind spots for defenders. What makes Almirall even deeper is that it was rebuilt in 1171 on a much older base, turning it into a stone memory of war, faith, and river power. Hidden on the eastern coast of the United States, the Great Dismal Swamp appears like an ancient swamp forest, both wild and chilling. Behind that silence, venomous snakes and black bears can hide among dark soil, tree roots, and black water, making this place feel like the territory of flesh-eating shadows. In 1763, George Washington once tried to drain the swamp for profit, but the water-soaking ground turned that plan into failure. The most haunting detail is the water, dark like strong tea, pierced by thousands of stone-hard roots, rising upward into a frightening maze. In the past, this swamp once covered more than 1 million acres, but the protected area today is only about 113,000 acres. Its thick forest, deep mud, and hard to enter landscape once turned it into a hiding place for many people escaping slavery. Mont Blanc, France, Italy. This legendary frozen kingdom stands as a place where the power of nature completely erases the national borders between France and Italy. At this summit, brutal winds reaching 93 miles per hour and temperatures of minus 40 degrees can freeze any living being in minutes. Running through the heart of the massive rock is a tunnel nearly 7 miles long, a technical marvel connecting 2 cultures beneath the ice. Giant glaciers are slowly returning debris from tragic plane crashes that remained hidden deep within the snow for many decades. The interaction between sunlight and ice crystals sometimes creates brilliant rainbow halos, transforming the sky into a surreal masterpiece. From the peak, you stand above a churning ocean of clouds where deep blue ice cracks wait to punish any traveller who becomes overconfident. Broken concrete slabs and rusty steel beams, once hanging above the deep gorge, turned El Caminito del Rey into the most dangerous walkway in the world. Although it was restored in 2015, the walkway remains about 3 feet wide and clings to a vertical cliff more than 328 feet above the water below. The pressure rises on a 98-foot steel mesh bridge, where hikers can see directly into the gorge while the floor moves slightly with each gust of wind. The narrow canyon forces air through the rock walls, so umbrellas are banned because a sudden gust could make visitors lose their balance near the edge. Because the route only allows movement in one direction, hikers must keep going forward after entering until they finally leave the gorge. Throughout the journey, remains of the original path can still be seen through gaps in the boards, reminding visitors of the time when this route was far more dangerous. Suspended above a deep gorge, Neva's swing suddenly drops riders into open space before throwing them through an arc nearly 984 feet long. As soon as they step onto the suspension bridge leading to the launch pod, many riders feel their hearts race, begin sweating, hesitate, and want to give up. From the metal pod held by cables, a drop of about 525 feet opens between bare rock walls, making the feeling of isolation even stronger. When the release opens, gravity pulls the body to nearly 75 miles per hour within seconds, leaving riders with almost no sense of control. After the first drop, the swing rushes through a narrow section of the gorge where the close rock walls create the feeling that riders are about to hit the cliff ahead. the experience becomes even more intense in the upside down position, as blood rushes toward the head and direction becomes difficult to understand when the fall begins. Cut into the mountainside like a narrow wound between a rock wall and a deep ravine, North Youngest Road once inspired terror because of the deadly crashes that repeatedly occurred there. The reason lies in its rough surface, which is only about 10 feet wide, has no guardrails, and is trapped between a steep cliff and a ravine nearly 1,969 feet deep. Because of this, vehicles once had to drive on the left so drivers could watch the cliff edge more easily and prevent their wheels from slipping off the narrow road. The danger grows as waterfalls pour directly onto the muddy surface, while thick fog can reduce visibility to less than 16 feet. These dangers have left behind many crosses and memorials along the route, recalling vehicles that once plunged into the forest below. Despite that deadly past, mountain bikers still descend nearly 40 miles here today, leaving their hands stiff and their brake pads dangerously hot after hours of controlling their speed. Stepping into Oymyakon, the pole of cold in the northern hemisphere, you face temperatures as low as minus 94 degrees Fahrenheit, where saliva can freeze before reaching the ground. During the silent winter, darkness lasts up to 21 hours each day, leaving only a few hours of weak sunlight near the horizon. To remain stable on the permafrost, buildings must stand on raised piles, preventing indoor heat from melting the frozen ground and causing the foundations to sink. In contrast to the extreme cold, hot springs still release steam among forests covered in white frost, creating a rare and surreal landscape. The freezing temperatures also drain phone batteries quickly, causing devices to shut down and making communication more difficult. This place reveals a cold truth. Against the power of nature, modern technology can become useless, forcing people to rely on their most basic survival instincts. Rising from the depths, Jaws creates walls of water between 59 and 79 feet high, powerful enough to break surfboards and pull surfers underwater. This force comes from an underwater cliff, where the seafloor suddenly rises from 118 feet to only 20 feet, forcing the entire mass of water upward. When the lip of the wave collapses, the air-filled white foam reduces the water's buoyancy, making it harder for the body to rise and pulling the surfer deeper. For this reason, big wave surfers often wear inflatable vests with carbon dioxide cartridges, helping them return to the surface quickly when they become disoriented or exhausted. However, this equipment only increases their chance of survival, because anyone in danger still depends completely on teammates and rescue jet skis. After a fall, they may have only about 15 seconds to reach the surface before the next wave, nearly 66 feet high, crashes down. Challenging the limits of fear, Edgewalk sends visitors onto a steel mesh ledge only 5 feet wide, suspended 1,168 feet above the ground with no guardrail. The nightmare begins when they place half of their feet beyond the edge, lean their entire bodies backward, and trust their lives to the cable above. Once the glass door closes, the one-way path requires them to keep moving around the tower. The fear becomes stronger because the open mesh floor reveals a drop equal to 116 stories, while the structure beneath them moves slightly with the wind. The safety harness tightly holds the body, while strong winds push sideways and turn every step into both a physical and mental challenge. Before stepping outside, participants must sign a risk agreement, turning the experience into a direct battle against their instinct to survive. Tearing away every safety boundary, Devil's Pool balances on the lip of a violent waterfall, where the shallow water can easily create a false sense of security. Before entering, visitors must sign a liability waiver, meaning they accept the consequences if the current pulls them beyond the controlled area. Once inside the cold water, panic grows as schools of small fish repeatedly rush toward them and bite at their skin. Even more frightening, the only thing preventing a drop of about 354 feet is a slippery underwater rock ledge less than 12 inches high. To reach the edge, visitors cannot move slowly but must cross the strong current and let the water pressure push them into the shallow zone. If they are swept beyond the ledge, there's powerful whirlpools and sharp rock walls below leave almost no chance of survival. So, passing within only a few inches of the rock walls, shotover jet races through the canyon at nearly 53 miles per hour, turning every blind bend into a test of reflexes. Its power comes from two V8 engines, producing more than 700 horsepower, allowing the boat to accelerate rapidly across the water. Instead of a propeller, the engines draw in and blast out nearly 211 gallons of water each second, allowing the boat to cross sections sometimes only 4 inches deep. When the boat needs to slow down, the driver redirects the water jets forward instead of using a conventional braking system. If passengers are thrown from the boat, water between 39 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit can quickly send their bodies into cold shock. During the 360-degree spin, every movement must be precise, because one wrong turn could make the boat slide off course, strike the rock wall, and throw passengers from the cabin. On the cliff edge of Debray Damo, climbers do not only look up at a leather rope, but at a boundary where one wrong hand movement can send them falling from the rock wall. Because there are no rivers or streams on the summit, monks had to carve deep tanks into the rock core to collect rain, turning water into what decides the monastery's survival. Before reaching the plateau, climbers must cross a cliff almost 49 to 98 feet high, with no road, no steps, and almost no place to correct a mistake. The 6th century monastery sits on a flat mountaintop about 7,270 feet high, cut off from the ground like a religious fortress locked in the air. After more than 1,400 years, Debris Damo still survives because of its cliffs, rare water, and single leather rope path, making every climb feel like a test between faith and the fear of falling. Without any countdown, the Zip Rider's safety gate suddenly drops, sending riders straight into the vast open space of Copper Canyon. Hanging from a cable that descends nearly 1,476 feet at a 17-degree angle, they quickly realise how small they are above the enormous canyon below. Along a route stretching more than 8,202 feet, speeds can reach nearly 65 miles per hour, causing both the starting point and the finish to quickly disappear from view. When starting early in the morning from an altitude of more than 7,874 feet, riders may plunge directly into a sea of white clouds and completely lose their view for several seconds. After breaking through the clouds, green and reddish-brown cliffs shine in the sunlight, creating the feeling of flying across a giant copper mine. As riders approach the final station, 100 steel springs compress together to absorb the energy and may help them slow down before reaching the stopping point. Annapurna I Ipawabira Nepal. Deep in the mighty Himalayas, Annapurna I rises to 26,545 feet and ranks as the world's 10th highest mountain, yet it is infamous for once having a death-to-summit rate of about 32%, a number that has long terrified climbers. Rather than rising like a single sharp spike, this mountain spreads out like a vast frozen fortress, and its south face, nearly 9,843 feet high, has long been regarded as one of the most frightening walls of rock and ice on Earth. That massive structure also blocks and twists the air around it, creating extreme local weather with sudden snowstorms, violent winds, and whiteout conditions that can erase every sense of direction in moments. Ironically, this brutally dangerous peak became the first mountain above 8,000 metres ever climbed by humans in 1950, opening a mountaineering history filled with pain, loss, and extraordinary courage. Yet the real danger comes not only from altitude or thin air, but from its deeply unstable snow and ice, where huge avalanches can crash down without warning and turn every ascent into a gamble for survival. When sunlight flashes across its blue-white ice beside dark and lifeless rock walls, Annapurna, it looks both magnificent and suffocating, like a harsh reminder that human life is frighteningly small before the power of nature. Baintha Brak, Pakistan. Baintha Brak rises through the clouds in granite towers shaped like the claws of a beast, standing about 23,901 feet high. And even without reaching 8,000 metres, it is still feared as one of the most brutal mountains because its technical difficulty gives almost no mercy. During the first ascent in 1977, one climber shattered both legs near the summit and had to drag himself with his hands and knees for 8 days through a snowstorm, while his partner was also badly injured and struck by severe pneumonia. Even more cruelly, the highest point is a huge, smooth block of stone with almost no flat standing space, so reaching the top feels like hanging in empty air. Instead of forming a normal summit shape, the whole mountain rises in giant stone towers with slick surfaces that offer climbers almost no real place to rest. Another deadly danger comes from the razor-sharp granite walls, where even strong climbing ropes can be damaged after only a few hard rubs in violent wind while a climber is suspended above the void. That escape became even more horrifying when the team ran out of food during the final 5 days and could only choose snow to force their bodies to keep moving away from this ogre-like mountain. Kangchenjunga, Nepal, India. Kangchenjunga rises like a giant fortress of snow and ice at about 28,169 feet, making it the world's third highest mountain. But what makes it even more intimidating is that it is not one single summit, but a vast X-shaped massif with 5 major peaks. In sharp contrast to that grandeur, it has had a death rate of about 22%, which is why it is still feared as one of the most ruthless killing machines in modern mountaineering. When dawn strikes this huge mountain, First, and sunset light lingers on it longer, the snow and ice glow in rich pink and gold, creating a beauty that feels almost unreal. Yet beneath that beauty lie steep slopes loaded with snow, turning the mountain into a natural trap where avalanches can rush down at terrifying speed and erase everything in their path. Along the walls hang giant seracs, and high above, long white cloud banners often appear as signs that violent winds are ripping across the summit snow. Local people see it as a sacred home of the gods, so since 1955, climbers have stopped a few feet below the highest point to honour the mountain without stepping on its true summit. Matterhorn, Switzerland, Italy. Matterhorn rises like a giant stone spear about 14,692 feet high with an almost perfectly symmetrical pyramid shape that makes it one of the most recognizable mountains on Earth. Behind that famous beauty lies a chilling history because during the first ascent in 1865, four of the seven climbers died when their rope snapped on the way down. Few people realise that the summit belongs to the African tectonic plate, while the lower part of the mountain is tied to the European plate, making it a living trace of a continental collision from millions of years ago. Unlike many high peaks buried inside massive mountain groups, it stands almost alone above the surrounding landscape, creating an impression of greater height, isolation, and power. Its four steep faces point almost directly toward the four main compass directions, and because the slopes are so sharp, snow struggles to stay in place, exposing dark grey rock above bright glaciers below. Even in modern times, the mountain still feels extraordinary because the speed record for climbing up and back down is only about 1 hour and 56 minutes. A reminder that this peak is both a symbol of beauty and a stage for human limits. Fitzroy, Argentina, Chile. Fitzroy rises like a giant blade of stone, with sharp granite points tearing through the sky, which is why it has long been seen as the uncrowned king of Patagonia. From cracks, hanging high above the eternal ice, meltwater falls like the tears of a giant and gathers into cold turquoise lakes of striking beauty below the mountain. When the first sunlight touches it, the rock walls flare into a burning red glow against white snow and icy blue water, giving the mountain a beauty that feels both dazzling and dangerous. Although it rises only about 11,171 feet, far lower than Everest, this peak still frightens climbers more because of its smooth vertical granite walls and harsh weather. And in some years, nobody reaches the summit. The whole massif is built from jagged stone spires like shark teeth, with nearly vertical walls running for more than 3,937 feet, and creating a crushing sense of scale for anyone standing below. Local people called it Shalten, meaning the smoking mountain, and humans did not reach its summit for the first time until 1952, after many years of seeing it crowned only with white cloud bands that looked like smoke. Cerro Torre, Argentina, Chile. Cerro Torre rises like a giant stone needle piercing the sky, standing about 10,262 feet high, and it has long become a symbol of something almost impossible to defeat in Patagonia's climbing world. Its history is filled with controversy and tension, from the claimed ascent in 1959 that was never fully proven, to the shock of 1970, when more than 400 iron bolts were hammered into the wall to force the mountain to surrender. And the mountain's harshness also shows itself in the fact that many climbers cannot even pitch tents near the top and must dig shelters inside hanging, soft ice formations like frozen mushrooms in the bitter wind. The whole mountain is a thin granite tower that rises at almost 90 degrees on every side, turning the climb into an extreme battle against rock, ice, and violent weather. Only in 1974 were climbers truly recognised as having stood on the summit tower, strengthening Cerro Torre's reputation as one of the hardest mountains on Earth to conquer. Mount Everest, Stillwell, Nepal, China, nowhere on Earth makes human beings feel so close to the sky and so close to death as Everest, a peak about 29,032 feet high that has long become the greatest symbol of the desire to conquer nature. But the price of standing on that summit has always been terrible because humans did not reach it until 1953, and more than 300 bodies still remain on the mountain like cold markers of ambition. At that height, the air is so thin that every step feels like movement inside slow suffocation, and people can usually stay on the summit for only about 20 to 30 minutes before the brain and lungs begin to face extreme danger from lack of oxygen. Even more astonishing, although it is already the roof of the planet, Everest is still rising by about zero point 0.2 inches each year because the tectonic plates below it never stop colliding and lifting it upward. Stranger still, the summit is made of sedimentary limestone filled with ancient marine fossils, proof that the highest place on Earth once lay deep beneath the ocean about 450 million years ago. Beneath all that glory is a quieter crisis because about 50 tons of trash, including abandoned oxygen bottles, broken tents, and human waste, are still collecting on the mountain, turning Everest into a symbol that is both magnificent and deeply alarming. Eiger, Switzerland. Called the Butcher of the Alps, Eiger stands about 13,015 feet high and makes people feel both drawn in and deeply uneasy, as if they are staring at a predator made of rock and ice. Near the upper part of the wall, a permanent ice field clings to the rock in the shape of a giant spider, creating one of the most frightening sections any climber must face. The mountain itself is also unstable because fragile limestone and shale mixed with melting ice above make rockfall common, and falling stones crash down with sounds like thunder. Its bloody reputation is tied to the North Face, a wall rising more than 5,906 feet, so deadly that it earned the haunting name Murder Wall after taking many climbers. Climbers. What makes it even more dangerous is that the north side curves slightly inward like a giant trap, holding wind, cloud, and snowstorms in place until the weather turns violent in moments. Strangely, a railway tunnel more than 4 miles long passes through this savage mountain core, and there is even a small door opening out from the wall itself, often used in dramatic rescue missions. Dhaulagiri, Nepal. Dhaulagiri was once regarded as the highest mountain on Earth for nearly 3 decades. And even today, this peak of about 26,795 feet still appears like a crown of white ice hanging in the blue sky. Because of its enormous size, the mountain can generate its own cloud systems and local storms, making the weather around it change in violent ways that often feel separate from the surrounding region. Along its steep slopes, huge glaciers cling to the cliffs as if they are suspended in midair, creating a cold and brilliant beauty while always threatening to collapse into terrifying avalanches. Humans did not reach the summit until 1960, and Dhaulagiri's cruelty is still clear in the fact that about 1 out of every 5 climbers who reach the top never return. Ushba, Georgia. Ushba rises like a pair of savage stone horns tearing across the Caucasus sky, standing about 15,453 feet high. And even though it is not among the world's tallest mountains, it still makes many climbers hesitate before it as a symbol of danger. Standing apart from the main mountain line, the massif acts like a giant lightning rod, often pulling in bolts that rip across the sky and turn the summit into a threatening stage of light. The whole mountain is made of raw red and black granite, hard like steel, yet slick and cold, while its west face is so smooth that climbers call it the mirror, because there is barely room for half a foot to hold on. Instead of one single top, Ushba is split into a southern and a northern summit, joined by a ridge as thin as a blade, where even one small mistake means an abyss on both sides. Its ancient name is often understood to mean the Mountain of Misfortune, a meaning that fits a place wrapped in storms, screaming wind, and violent changes of weather. With no fixed camps, no pre-installed ropes, and almost no trace of commercialization, Ushba has kept its brutal wildness, as if it has never accepted the presence of human beings. Denali, United States. Denali rises like a gigantic wall of ice dominating the far north, standing about 20,308 feet high as the tallest mountain in all of North America. Beneath that immense presence lies a shifting glacier maze where countless deep crevasses are hidden under snow bridges so thin that a single wrong step can swallow a climber whole. The weather here is so violent that clear sunshine can turn into a whiteout storm within minutes, while northern winds can drive the wind chill down to about minus 117 degrees Fahrenheit. What makes this mountain so extraordinary is the way it rises almost suddenly from the lower land below, creating a vertical rise of about 18,045 feet and making its size feel almost unreal. During climbing season, Denali lies under endless polar daylight, when sunrise and sunset blend together for many hours and wash the icy slopes in a pink-orange glow that feels both brilliant and cold. Stranger still, in 1910, a group of miners with almost no specialised gear climbed a lower summit simply to prove a wager, making the contrast between Denali's pride and human recklessness feel even sharper. Shishapanma, China. This solitary giant stands tall in the middle of a high plateau where earth and sky meet in a threatening silence. Thick white clouds from the south often spill over the summit like a massive waterfall crashing down onto the vast plains. With wind speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour, nature carves the ice into razor sharp blades hanging over the abyss. At this lethal altitude, the daytime sky turns such a deep dark blue that you can clearly see the stars twinkling. Right on the towering peak, the presence of ancient sea fossils proves that an ocean floor was pushed all the way to the clouds. Extremely loose snow structures turn this place into a deadly trap, ready to trigger the most devastating avalanches on the planet. Manaslu, Nepal. It stands as the eighth highest peak on the planet, a mystical kingdom of spirits located in the heart of the Himalayas. Every year, this giant silently rises about 5 millimeters higher due to the violent collision of continental tectonic plates. From a distance, the two sharp peaks piercing the sky look like the threatening fangs of a prehistoric beast. The route's trickery lies in its false summits, where narrow ice ridges leading to the true peak can hurl anyone into the abyss. It remains one of the most ruthless killers above 8,000 metres, where sudden avalanches can erase life in an instant. As the sun sets, the mountain's shadow stretches for tens of miles like a giant ghost, haunting the entire valley below. Mount Logan is Canada. It is not just a single peak, but a massive icy continent whose immense scale completely overwhelms the human imagination. Because of its location near the poles, the air pressure is much thinner than on other mountains, turning every single breath into a desperate struggle for life. In temperatures of negative 107 degrees Fahrenheit, hard plastic becomes as brittle as crackers, and heavy metal can snap under the pressure of snowstorms. Beneath a sky so dark it appears black, the thunder of collapsing icefall serves as the most terrifying reminder of the ultimate power of the freezing poles. Mount Washington, USA. It is a climate monster hiding behind a peaceful appearance, famously known as the place with some of the world's most brutal weather. To prevent buildings from being swept away, they are anchored to the rocks with massive iron chains capable of holding many tons. Supercooled water droplets in the fog freeze instantly upon contact, forming sharp white ice feathers that can grow several feet long. For 76 years, this summit held the world record for the fastest wind speed ever measured on land at 231 miles per hour. Because of the extreme environment, the air pressure is so low that your body feels as if it was standing at 10,000 feet. The combination of wind and cold can drive temperatures down to negative 58 degrees, freezing human skin in just a few short seconds. Pumori, Nepal, China. It stands as the proud snow princess of the Himalayas, known as the daughter of Everest with a charming beauty but a heart of death. The brutal power of this mountain was once proven by a historic disaster when an earthquake triggered a avalanche wiped out an entire base camp in an instant. Massive hanging ice blocks weighing thousands of tons constantly lurk on vertical cliffs, ready to collapse into snow tsunamis that erase everything in their path. In the solitary and thin air, the line between reality and illusion fades as climbers begin to see invisible companions walking with them through the white snow. Aoraki, Mount Cook, New Zealand. It is not merely a mountain, but a sacred ancestor guarding the Southern Alps. Every year, this giant silently rises about 1 inch due to the intense collision of tectonic plates. Violent storms frequently sweep across the slopes with terrifying winds exceeding 124 miles per hour. Beneath its magnificent beauty, it remains the deadliest peak as the weather can turn fatal within mere minutes.